Good evening and welcome to our webinar on Hangout on air on the Food Hygiene Rating System. Tonight I'm joined by Mark Williams. Hi Mark.
Hello, good evening.
Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do, just for viewers' benefits?
Yeah, I'm an environmental health officer. I specialise in housing. Of course, as part of the environmental health officer training, you do sort of have some basic background in food safety, but it's something I've never actually practiced in. But I also run a website called theehp.com.
Right.
Yeah, and that's me.
You have something to do with publishing as well, don't you?
Well, in terms of publishing, it's really I actually do a lot of searches online for environmental health related books, and actually have bring them all together, find the great the latest deals in environmental health books, and publish those quite regularly.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, Steve. It's like Eurovision Song Competition. I'm speaking from sunny Worsley and the votes of the Mancunian, not Mancunian, I'm a Yorkshireman. I'm an environmental health practitioner, freelance trainer and consultant, and tend to work with a lot of organisations, including the CIEH and the Food Standards Agency, but I'm an independent consultant, and I also have a little blogging site called The Creative Trainer.
Yeah, I had a quick look at that the other week. It's anyone who hasn't seen it, it's quite an interesting fact. What we're going to do tonight is I've got well, I say short, it's probably longer than yours was on the first one we did last month. Last month. And it's all about the Food Hygiene Rating System. What I intend to do is just sort of whistle through that to give people an idea of where it comes from, and then we can have a bit of a discussion, and if there's anyone out there watching, then they can send in questions, Mark can read them out to us, and we'll take it from there. So, if that's okay, there we go. So, the Food Hygiene Rating System. Oops, a daisy, I'm pressing the wrong buttons here, which is great. When did it start? Well, if you go back to 2006, 2007, the Food Standards Agency ran a few pilot schemes across the country. Various ones. The one from Hull was very interesting. It was actually called then Scores on the Doors. The Staffordshire one, which is Rate My Place, is still going in that name, although they've converted to the Food Hygiene Rating System. The real eye-opener on that one is on their website. They actually publish the actual inspection reports. You don't have to go and ask for them. You just click and you can download them. Haringey Council had one, Derby had one, and Harrogate started on the 1st of July 2010. It wasn't the first in the country. And what happened with Harrogate, they converted to the Food Hygiene Rating System on the 1st of April 2012. And that's been running now again for the last 2 and a bit years. The Food Hygiene Rating System was set up to give information to consumers about the standards of hygiene in food businesses. The scheme also designed to get people to improve the food hygiene standards. It's run in England, Wales and Northern Ireland by local authorities along with the Food Standards Agency, and in Scotland they've got a separate 2-tier scheme called Food Hygiene Information Scheme. Much simpler, it's either pass or an improvement required, so it's pass or fail basically, whereas we've got the 0 to 5. Most food businesses that sell food to consumers are included. There are a few exemptions: chemist shops, newsagents, leisure centres, they've got vending, home care and childminders, but not home caterers. If you are excluded but you want to go in because you think you could do good, you can request to opt into the scheme. Primary producers, factories, etc., packers, importers, exporters, etc., are all excluded, but cash and carries are included. So your local bookers and all your local cash and carries are included in this scheme. In England, the local authority inspectors use this thing. It's a code of practice called Food Law. The last update up until the April 2014 was 2012. I only got a chance to look at it last night, so if I've missed out about any of the updates, I'll apologise in advance. I'm not an expert on the law. I just teach food safety. It now reflects the changes to the food scoring under the guidance in Annex 5 of the code. So if you search the Food Standards Agency website, you'll get that, but it's not like bedtime reading. Frequency of interventions. Basically, when you register a new food business, you've got to give 28 days notice. And then an environmental health officer will come out and score you and give you your rating. And each time that they come thereafter, they will look at your rating and regrade you accordingly. They might get called in if there's a particular risk to health, or there's been customer complaints or an outbreak or whatever. The frequency of the inspections relies on 3 factors. The first one is what's the potential hazard? They have a scoring system, and generally speaking, unlike the food hygiene rating system, which goes from 0 to 5, with 5 being the best, when they are scoring a place, the higher the score, the worse it is. So the type of food and method of handling will score from 5 if you're a small caterer to 40 if you're a sort of a large national manufacturer of high-risk food. The method of processing will either be 0 if you're just an ordinary caterer, up to 20 if you have sort of vacuum packing, sous vide, that type of process. And the consumers at risk will have a score. So, for example, small outlets through to manufacturing. You will also have an additional score of 22 if you've got vulnerable groups. So things like hospitals, nursing homes, nurseries, schools, under 5s, anyone who's sick or immunocompromised. So that's the first of the 3 factors of potential hazard. They'll then look for the level of current compliance. So that's how good you are. And if you're an existing business, they've already got a good idea. So the score 0 to 25, high standards would be a 0, 25 would be an almost total non-compliance. Then they'll look at your confidence in management and your control procedures. Basically, for small caterers, this is your safer food, better business, or your HACCP. And again, 0 to 30, 0 will be an excellent record, 30 would be a poor track record with little or no technical knowledge. And if you've got a risk of botulism, E. coli, salmonella, or bacillus cereus, there's an additional score of 20. Then, when you look at the frequency, you add all those scores together, and that determines the higher you are, the more frequently you will get inspected. So, if you've got a poor record of food safety, they'll be looking around at you every 6 months, possibly, maybe 12 months. A hospital, our local hospital, it's every 6 months they get inspected. But if you're a small catering business that's relatively low risk, it's going to be anything up to 3 years. Each local authority is responsible for a large number of businesses, so what they tend to do is look at the risks, and they focus their attention on people who are posing either a high risk because of what they do, or because they've got poor standards of compliance in the past. So takeaway with raw and cooked will be more frequently inspected than a small retailer selling pre-packed foods, sandwiches, etc. And also, if someone sees sort of a pest outside of a place, a food business, then that might trigger a visit as well. So the food safety officer will look how hygienically the food is handled, the condition of the structure of the buildings, and how the business manages its food safety. This is taken from one local authority website, and I don't know if you can see that well enough. Can you read that, guys?
Not quite.
Oh, I can't. No,
I can now. I've got my glasses on.
Right. Basically, if you've got good standards, you'll score 0, or if you've got poor standards, that will score up to 25, and anywhere in between. Again, the structure and the cleaning. So if your place is like a tip, it's not clean, you've got paint flicking off the walls, tiles hanging off the walls, or whatever, you're going to score 20, 25. If it's pristine, 0 or a 5, depending on what they find at the visit. Confidence in management is down again to either your HACCP system if you have one, or your Safer Food Better Business, or if you're a butcher, it'll be the butcher's Safer Food Better Business, possibly. And again, that's scored 0 to 25. So that gives them a grid which goes anywhere on those 3 areas from 0 to 25. And the way that's converted into scores on the, not scores on the doors, the food hygiene rating is, if you look along the top line, those are the scores based on that previous slide there. Okay, so to get a rating of 5, if you look at the middle, that's the top rating it says very good, then you've got to have a score of 0 to 15 with no individual score greater than 5. And again, if you've got, say, you've scored a 5, a 5 and a 10, then you can't have 5. You've got to be a 4. And that goes, the further down the slope it goes, the worse it gets. Now, a colleague of mine who's an environmental health officer said, compared to scores on the doors, it's easier to get a high score, but it is now easier for your score to slip away very quickly. So if you've only got to miss out by not having a current safer food, better business, that your scores start sliding down drastically. So that's how the thing is scored. Revisits and reinspection. If they find anything wrong at the visit, they will do a revisit, which again will be unannounced. They will not change the rating at this revisit. This is just to see that you've complied with any advice they've given, any improvement notices or whatever. The reinspection cannot be done less than 3 months after the original inspection. And again, that will be done unannounced. Not too sure whether or not every authority will do it on demand. Some might even want to make a charge for that service, because a lot of environmental health departments are fairly pushed, fairly stretched. And again, it's up to you to get your rating right in the first place, really. So how fair are they? There are safeguards built into the system. You will get 14 days notice where you can appeal. And you've got a right to reply, so you can comment on your rating, tell people why. You know, it might be that all your staff were off, you had agency staff in, you were away, things slipped a bit, but now you've put it all right, or you've improved something. So you can actually put something there to let people know. There is guidance available on this on the Food Hygiene Food Standards Agency website if you have a look. You've got the appeal form there, that's downloadable, and it will be considered by the lead officer, not the person who carried out the inspection, and you will be notified within 7 days. Your rating won't be published until you've been notified about an appeal, but if you don't appeal, then that's what you get. Right to reply, that's the form there, again downloadable, and you can explain, well, it was bad on the day, but this is what we've done since there, or there might have been unusual circumstances. Pardon me. So you can tell people what you've done. You can request a revisit. It can't be done before 3 months. The revisits will be unannounced. The ratings may go up, down, or they may remain the same. So it's up to you to make sure that you've improved the system if you want to get revisited. If you want to check it out, it's www.food.gov.uk/ratings. And you can search for these online for any food business in the UK that comes under this system. If you want more information, this is you can do a freedom of information request, and there may well even be a charge for this. I'm not 100% certain. But people like Stafford Local Authority make this freely available, and this is a version of their website, which is called Rate My Place. And as well as the rating on this one, it's a 1, wherever it was. I've screwed out the name to protect the guilty. And there is a PDF of the actual report online for you to download. Now, I haven't identified this place, even though I would be perfectly able to do so. And that's the sort of thing that was on that particular inspection. There was a package of raw chicken on top of yogurt drinks. There was fish portions in the walk-in freezer that are completely defrosted and smell off. Some salad items that were starting to rot. Dirty cardboard on the floor, which milk was stored on a dirty pallet, etc., etc. So it shows you the full the whole shooting match. So here we are. If you've got any questions you want to send in, that's great. If not, I'll hand over to you guys. Let me just I'll hand over to you first, David. I mean, it's the first time you've seen that.
Well, Steve, I have to absolutely compliment you, and we haven't rehearsed this bit. I think that's an excellent, speedy summary of the system. Notwithstanding that, you know, you could have an hour's debate about every slide and every grade and rating. It's a system that's been put together to do the best that it can, and there'll always be little arguments about whether it should be 5 or 10. But you've really overviewed it exceptionally well, and I've nothing to comment on except to say it is what it is. It's a brilliant scheme, and that doesn't mean to say it's unflawed because of opinions. And I know plenty of consultants who will argue the scheme is deficient. And when you ask them why, they normally say because my client got a low score. I think sometimes we have to put up with that for the sake of the 500,000 or 1 million businesses who are going to get a score. So I'm perfectly happy with the whole thing.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Sorry, Mark.
Sorry, Steve. I just had a quick question. I don't know if I missed it, but did you actually say that businesses have to actually display the actual score irrespective of the? Because I see lots of 5s walking around. I don't see much else, I don't think.
You will see 5s all around. Now, what happened back end of last year, the Welsh scheme comes under the Welsh Assembly, etc., etc., as the Scottish one does, and I think the Northern Ireland one probably is separate. And what's happened, the Welsh Assembly voted to make display mandatory. So you've actually got to put your score on the screen, on your premises in a prominent position. Now, when I walk around my hometown of Harrogate, yeah, all I see is 4s and 5s. I occasionally see a 3, but that's not often. And if you see a 2 or a 1, what are people going to do? What's the average consumer in the street going to do? They're going to walk by and go somewhere else. And I wondered what was going to happen overnight, and I was rather hoping a colleague of mine from Wales was going to be on tonight, but she's got kids and it's not an easy time of day for her. But what I gather from her is that in Wales, since they've had the mandatory display, the standards have gone up, and that doesn't surprise me. If you think about it, if you had a business and you had a score of 1, and you're starting to lose customers to your competitors, I think you're going to do something about it. What do you reckon, David?
Well, mandatory display, you're right, is being launched in Wales first, and the English part of the FSA is looking at it with interest. But I always knew when we talked about mandatory display, it sounds like a great idea, but putting it into law is quite tricky. And then what you do is you burden the enforcement officers with another enforcement duty, which is to check that these things are displayed. So I think it is a case of going fairly slowly along this line. You're right, you see plenty of 4s and 5s. You do see 1 or 2 businesses who think 1 is good and display it, and all credit to them for not understanding the scheme. It's pretty... I think we're all the same opinion. Mandatory display, as and when it comes about, will be one of the big turning points on this.
I think
it's not there in England or Scotland or Northern Ireland yet.
Sorry, Mark, you were going to say?
Yeah, it was just. I suppose it's something I've been thinking about over the past few weeks, actually, because I suppose it's this question of will all. I mean, unless put it another way, in housing, occasionally you'll actually have some landlords who have pretty poor properties. They don't really mind that they've got poor properties because there's a market out there who don't mind renting poor properties. And I was actually wondering if there's something similar when it comes to food businesses. In that, I mean, the reason where this comes from is I was watching that the food inspectors, and on the one episode, I was surprised when you've got this one place. I think it was some place in Coventry where the food inspectors went there. Obviously, they're filming, and they found that there was I think there might have been a rat infestation there or something like that. And it just amazed me that this company was quite happy for the BBC to film there and not think, well, is my place good enough to sort of like stand up to that? And on the one hand, I was thinking, well, maybe they're paid to sort of be part of that. And I asked one of the people who was part of the program, and it says, as far as they're concerned, no. So I suppose my question is, I mean, are there going to be those food businesses out there, if they are made to actually display these, who literally they'll display them and there'll be no comeback because they're just a business where people will just go and eat and don't really care?
I think you're right. I would say you're absolutely right. And in the 30 years I've been doing this, you have to resign yourself to the fact that we're looking at shifting around 10% of food businesses from being unhygienic to willingly compliant. The rest will ultimately need to be prosecuted. And I think that's the grand scheme. If you can shift those businesses who are genuinely ignorant of the need to have good hygiene through a hygiene rating scheme, then you leave the enforcement officers with enough time to leave them alone, more or less, and concentrate on either the rogue businesses or the businesses that are a serious risk. And I think we have to see the food hygiene rating scheme as just one component of a set of interventions, and by itself it won't change the landscape that much, but it's a very useful persuasive tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve. I just had a follow-on question for this. Sorry to jump in. Has anybody done any research as to whether customers actually pay any attention to the actual scores?
Yeah, there's a full research report on the FSA website. Then they also do hygiene tracker every year. So if you dip into the research documents on the FSA website, you'll see an opinion survey about the food hygiene rating scheme done about every 18 months.
Okay.
And it asks businesses what they think. It looks at how many businesses have got what ratings, and then I think the public hygiene tracker asks people if they know about the scheme and whether it makes a difference. I mean, that's not perfect research, but there is quite a lot of work out there that's tracking the shift over the probably 6 or 7 years now since there have been these kind of schemes in place. I think, to be fair, there are members of the public who are only concerned how much the takeaway costs.
Yeah.
And how close it is to their house compared to the hygiene standard, but at least the public have got a choice then, haven't they? They can choose to go somewhere. Personally, I won't go anywhere that's got less than a 3.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Only because my stomach drives me quite a lot of times. If you say 5, you limit your choice.
I must admit, when I'm on the food hygiene courses that I run, especially at level 2, they say, after I've sort of gone through all the stuff, they say, well, do you ever eat out, Steve? I said, of course I do. But I only eat entree dishes where I know where they've got good standards. Other than that, it's always sort of like things that cook fresh, like a steak or a gammon or fish and chips, scampi, where there's much less chance of you having a food poisoning outbreak. Just to go back to what you're saying about people displaying low scores, there was a case in the Leeds area where a takeaway actually displayed very proudly 2 stars on the front of their doors, and they actually thought that it was the equivalent of 2 Michelin stars. So
that's why the discussion was had about 2 years ago not to have a star rating scheme, but to have number, because of the potential confusion. So it's just a number between 0 and 5, as you say. And Mark, you said something else. You're getting me excited now, and I want to have my supper. I'm just wondering where to go and eat tonight, by the way. But when you said mandatory display will make a difference, it will. But of course, don't forget there's mandatory access to the rating schemes, because all the rating schemes are on the web. Mm-hmm. And the Food Standards Agency has, no surprise, has an app for that. So I've got an app on my phone. So it means that although they're not displayed on the door, anybody can look up the hygiene rating of any of these food businesses and get access at least to the score, if not always the report. And Steve's probably showing the app on his phone now.
One there, that one there, which is the official one from the scores on the doors, which is what the firm still calls itself. And you've got another one there, which I can't read what it's just as food hygiene. But both of them will give you a rating on the app. And if you can see there, this is probably set to, this is the local businesses, because I've got it set to local. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's kind of. So if you take your phone with you and you've got 3G or Wi-Fi or whatever, then you can always check the place out. The one caveat I would always say is that it's only a snapshot. So you could, in theory, have someone that was inspected at 10 o'clock in the morning before they really opened, before any food was being handled or whatever. The environmental health officer goes in and inspects it, finds nothing wrong. But if they'd gone 2 hours later in the middle of food service, they might have had some call for question. So it is only a snapshot. Like you'll see on a car.
You're exactly right to say that, Steve. We take it. My personal approach as a customer is, I always ask them what the hygiene rating is, and that's interesting. If the response is, oh, we're very proud of our 5 because of the following things, fine. If they say, oh, I don't know, I start to think, well, obviously you've got a number, but none of the staff realise that hygiene's important. And my wife gets very annoyed about how I won't order until I've asked that question.
Do you check yours?
I'm a very annoying... Yeah, everywhere.
Oh no, Steve, do you check the scores of where you eat?
God, yeah. I mean, our local takeaway went from a 5 to a 3, and I stopped going there. I changed it a lot. Particularly takeaways. I mean, they were always at one time they were particularly good, but they went through a patch where you could sort of, once you saw that they actually took the 5 down and didn't display it, and I went online, checked it was a 3, and I sort of put my nose through the door and thought, yeah, change of staff, and they had other problems as well. But I take it as a general guide, and I tend, if it's a 3, then I'm very, very careful what I eat. If it's a 4 or 5, I might be a little bit less fussy about, well, I might have, a curry or a takeaway type of thing. But I'm always a little bit wary because I've seen, like David. I mean, I've come from the catering production side. David's come from the environmental health side, and we both do audits, we both do food checks, but we're looking at it from probably 2 different ends of the spectrum. But I've seen like David, I've seen too many places where they get it wrong, and I want to make sure for my own personal safety and for that of my family that we've got it right. So we only tend to go for the 4s and the 5s. 3s if we're out and about and we've nowhere else to eat. Yeah.
And I think there's another point here, Steve, which is that I feel obliged as a member of my profession to help promote the scheme. I mean, behind closed doors, I might argue that the 5 should be a 10, the 10 should be a 5. And if my client gets a bit disadvantaged, I'll argue the toss and defend them to the hilt. But, we're not going to have these systems working unless we all go out and promote them. So I think it's, like, you're a food safety trainer, I'm an EHP and trainer. It's our obligation, isn't it, to spread the word, as long as we're not too boring about it. But I don't think there's any harm in just asking when one goes in and just seeing what the reaction is. And I was just going to ask Steve, though, knowing his background, that if it's a 5, would you order steak tartare and oysters then?
No, never even. Many years ago, as a young lad, about 18, 20 years old, I went out to the local pub and I bought a pint of Guinness and a jar of cockles, which I'd never eaten before. Went home, and within a couple of hours I was throwing up all over the place, and it wasn't the Guinness. So I've never eaten shellfish, mollusks since then. I like crustacea, but I don't like mollusks. So I won't have mille marinier or whatever. I certainly wouldn't have steak tartare then or now. I certainly wouldn't have a rare beef burger. I'll have a rare steak, no problem. I don't like.
I think we've got you on your hobby horse there, Steve.
Listen, guys. I mean, to be honest, personally, I'll be honest. I don't think I've ever checked. Actually, before. No. I mean, me and my wife, we don't really eat out a huge amount. We go to probably a local restaurant and whatnot every now and again, and we go there regularly because we really like the place. But personally, I suppose I will check from now on. But I've just never really. I've just never really.
I don't make a big show of it. I just think it's an obligation to ask. And if, for example, if I go somewhere and I find it's a 2 and I'm with a group, I might have to make a decision about saying I don't want to get awkward about it. Just choose what I want. We're not trying to make it the be all and end all. I just think the more we promote it, the better. That's all.
Yeah, no, you're right. But I've got a question. I mean, I noticed you said something about your client. As someone I don't really know how things work in the actual food safety consultancy business. Well, I mean, like, what do people like you actually do as in consultants actually do for your clients? I mean, what can you actually do for your clients?
Do anything the client. If the client's, if I don't want the Steve's the same. If a client rings me up and says we've just had a blooming EHO in and they've given us a 2, and I'll be saying, why have they given you a 2? I don't know, because you designed our HACCP system. I say, well, hang on a minute. I'll have to come down and have a look. It might be you deserve a 2. I always believe in looking at the facts, and usually there's at least a grain of truth in why they've been what they feel is disadvantaged. And then maybe we need to retrain people, or maybe we need to hold our hands up. And once I did get back to the EHO, who happened to know, and had a long, hard discussion with them, and we got a bit of a shift. But I think those I mean, as a professional, I always careful what I say. I think those are the exceptions that prove that the system works well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're right, David. I once had a situation where I had a customer. I'd done all the training. I've even trained the staff to level 3, and I saw someone from the raw meat department walk straight through 2 doors. I'd put some meat into a fridge, put his hands on the table talking to the chef, walked back out through the doors without washing his hands. Then all the food handlers walked in, touched the 2 doors, went into the room, and not one of them washed their hands before handling food. And I wouldn't mind, but I was delivering their certificates at the time. You know, so you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Now, what I did do in that case, I didn't have a word with the head chef. I actually emailed the boss and I told him what I'd seen. I said, look, if I'd have been an AHO and there was a risk there of someone, you know, spreading E. coli or whatever, then you might have had a nasty shock on your rating. So what they did was it focused their attention. So training isn't always the be-all and end-all of getting food safety right. It's actually monitoring, supervising. And you're right with the HACCP system. You might set it up or help them set it up, but you're not there to run it on a daily basis. They've got to take ownership. And
yeah. I mean, do you do some of your training, Steve, like I do? A small part of my training is about the philosophy and of food safety and giving people confidence to explain themselves to an enforcement officer.
Yeah, I was actually with Judith. I don't know, I've forgotten her surname now. But Judith was training yesterday, and it's a new course that's been brought out at level 3 on food safety culture, which is an interesting one. We had a really good set of discussions on it and what it means. And I think that when I start to deliver that training, I will probably end up either limit it to other trainers like myself, or limiting it to businesses. Because I think the minute you start getting people from different backgrounds in on food safety culture, you're going to have some really lively discussions.
Yeah, there are two. Very briefly, I asked this question of Sarah Appleby last week at the CIH conference about culture, but we had to understand we're talking about two things. One is different cultures manage food in different ways, but there is which is one I'm not an expert in, but certainly the culture of a business in terms of how it approaches food safety is one that I'm after, and they're doing a lot of work at the FSA to understand that all these systems and documents and training are one thing, but the ability for a manager to pass on to his or her staff the attitude to food safety is the trick, and that doesn't come out of a book or out of a document. It comes out of a philosophical approach to food safety, which sounds a bit grand. It just means every member of staff needs to know we're serious about food safety. And when you ask them, what does that mean? They say, well, for example, when I do cleaning, I do this, this, this. And if they can't explain that, then I start to worry.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I was talking to Jude yesterday after she'd done the course, and I've explained what we're trying to achieve with these these short webinars, and I've actually invited her to come on a future one to give us a presentation on food safety culture. Because the way she was coming from it was much wider than just the organisation. It was, I suppose, society at large, businesses, the government, criminal activity, all these types of things, as well as what we've got control of within the organisation. Anyway, I just want to very, very briefly, because we've gone about 35 minutes again, that is the document which to download off the website, which is the Food Law Code of Practice England. It is a document that's designed for environmental health. The bit to look for is Annex 5, which starts looking like that, and that's the actual scoring on that particular section, and you look at the total there, and that makes up the first part of A, etc. The document's about 189 pages, so it's not exactly like bedtime reading. But what is a bit better, that the Food Standards Agency are also, they publish loads of stuff, but they've got that one which says Food Hygiene Rating, and sort of a bit of a guide to what a business needs to know, particularly about the appeals procedure and whatever. So that's all useful stuff. We are starting to run these set webinars now once a month. what we're trying to aim for is to keep a regular time. And I think, I don't know about you two guys, but the 7 o'clock start certainly was better than the 6 o'clock start for me, because like today I've been teaching level 4. I didn't finish till 5:45, and it gave me a bit of breathing space to get ready by myself, and I didn't feel quite as rushed as the last one. So I'm looking at doing 7 p.m. first Tuesday every month for people to be able to tune in and spread the word around.
Well, you can count me in. I mean, obviously, from my point of view, it's just really good to practice, whether there's anybody watching or not. Getting comfortable with this environment is important. There are other systems as well as Google Hangouts, but it's nice to use a social media type platform for it as well.
Well, you don't have to pay for it either. So I'm a Yorkshireman. I'm not tight.
Well, I'm a fellow Yorkshireman as well, so don't worry about that. I'm okay with the whole idea. And thank you for your company again, guys. I'm really enjoying the experience and building my skills.
Yeah, 7 o'clock for me works fine actually. And in terms of this, I mean, from my point of view, I mean, I don't work in food, and I always feel a bit. Sometimes I do feel a bit bad that I did a 4-year degree and I learned all about food safety, health and safety, and all this kind of stuff. I've only ever worked in housing. I just think it's just nice to sort of talk with some food guys and hear about food and food safety and whatnot. It's just I just find it entertaining. It's really good. I enjoy this.
Well, I must admit I value your contribution, Matt, because you're coming at it welcoming it from people who sort of like know the industry, know the food safety side of stuff, etc., etc. And sometimes we can't see the wood for the trees. So having an outsider's perspective, I mean, you are trained in environmental health, but you look at it from an outsider's, and I think some of the stuff, when I revisited the webinar the other day, some of the stuff you put in was very refreshing and very valuable. And I think as time goes on and we get more and more people watching live, or more people taking part in the panel for discussion, I do want to increase this. I don't see this as you're my competition, Dave, so I'm not going to have you on here. We work in different parts of the country anyway, and we're not probably direct competition. We can probably help each other, if anything. And I want more people who are experts, because it actually manages my CPD. If I'm seeing other people putting on a talk about something I've not really come across, it's a very relaxed, friendly atmosphere we seem to have on here. And if I'm going to learn something, I can actually put that as a half-hour CPD for myself.
Well, you can, and I don't have any difficulty in this being recorded as CPD, and no doubt I'll run it past my friends at CIH. But I think it's really easy to do it, providing there's an agenda and a presentation. So although it would be easy to argue that a 45-minute hangout discussion about X, Y, and Z was CPD, but the safest route is to build it around a presentation like you have done, Steve. So we don't need to have certificates. What we just need to say is on this day at this time we had a presentation from Steve Pepper, and it lasted 45 minutes, and that's core CPD.
Yeah, and, I think that the 10-15 minute PowerPoint seems to work well.
I would keep that in. All right, guys, I have to sign out and get something to eat from a hygiene rating of at least 4.
Yes.
I'm up in my standards tonight.
No, I take it there's no questions come through tonight.
No, I've kept an eye on this, and I don't see any questions there.
Well, so we're going to sign off now, and we will catch everyone next time. But hopefully, some people will review this on YouTube. The last one so far has got about 68 views, so I'm not complaining about that at all. So we'll see you later, folks. Bye.
Have a good June and July.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Oh, July, right. Good night, guys.